Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2. I finished this part about a week or two ago, and while I probably won't be able to get to Part 3 for a long time because, well, it's I can't make the review for it because it's like 40 episodes that'll probably take a while to get through. Today we're going to be reviewing Part 2, and I'll give my honest opinion about it and why I think it's both something and something else I can't really say because I want to actually explain the review. But yeah, let's just hop right into this. So, what's the story summary? After the events of Part 1, the main character is completely different from last time. Instead of the character Jonathan, we now have the main character, Joseph. Now, Joseph is quite different from the previous Jonathan. Despite the fact that he's replaced him as the main character, he's very different than him in a lot of different ways. For one, compared to Jonathan, who was always like, justice for all, justice everything, Joseph has a lot more of a carefree attitude, being like, the next thing you're gonna say is, you couldn't possibly have done that, JoJo! And it's just, he has a really funny, really entertaining personality. I can definitely say that going to the likes and dislikes, I can talk about that a little more. But yeah, basically the new focus is on Joseph, where he goes through quite different events than what Jonathan went through in the first part, where he deals with completely different threats than what, again, Jonathan faced. And without spoiling too much, so let's just explain what I liked and disliked. Jonathan is not very good, but I'll be honest, Joseph's my favorite JoJo. So far, as what I've seen of 2 episodes of Part 3 and all of Part 1, I can generally say Joseph is my favorite JoJo. He is one of the major reasons I actually really liked a lot of this season. I thought the story was solid for the most part, but he definitely, I think the words alleviated it to new heights, and he just was so entertaining throughout the entire, whole season. I call it a season because it's just a part, but he was so entertaining throughout the whole thing. I was just amazed at how much fun he was to watch. And I also really like his best friend in the story, Caesar, who I didn't even know until my friend pointed it out while we were watching that apparently Caesar is voiced by Bryce Papenbrook, the voice of Kirito. I didn't even notice. That just kind of makes me have respect for him as a voice actor again, because if you cannot recognize a voice, then it just shows how good of a voice actor they are, because he had like an Italian-like accent, so it was hard for me to tell that was him, but it just sounded so different that I just really liked it. Well, yeah, I also really like his best friend Caesar, not Little Caesars, just Caesar, and there's a lot of interesting side characters, such as the character Lisa, as well as, of course, there's another love interest for another JoJo, but we can get into that a bit in the spoiler section. And yeah, I actually really liked a lot of the characters in this season. The story was very solid, and while it definitely feels like it had an awkward ending, since if we're going to dislikes, I didn't really like the ending that much at first, which I can go into the spoiler section about, where I didn't really like it at first, but somehow an ending that originally felt really underwhelming suddenly became so much better by the end. So I definitely got to give it props for that. As for other stuff I disliked, one thing would definitely have to be the villains in this arc. I thought the villains in this arc were incredibly weak in terms of character, and overall I just thought they were probably the weakest part of this part, because again, I spoil so much spoiler section talk, But going into a quick batch of spoiler-free thoughts, I actually really liked this. It was so much fun to watch. While I had a few issues, none of them really took away from the whole, series. I found myself heavily enjoying this, and overall, I am just astounded at how different it is compared to Part 1. Part 1 felt so much like it was so underwhelming. I thought, how is this series popular? And then in Part 2, I actually started to really get it, because Part 2 was so freaking entertaining. I loved Part 2. There was so much good about it that I just want to talk about spoiler stuff, because I want to give an idea of what I fully have to say. So here's a timestamp to when the spoiler section that we're about to enter is going to end in. If you want to see the conclusion of my final choice, make sure to check it out there. But if you want to hear my full thoughts, including stuff that I can't discuss here without spoiling, you can continue watching. So I'm going to count down from 5, and then we enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so in terms of spoilers, there were a few more predictable things in this season, sadly. One of those being the reveal that the character Lisa is Joseph's mother. I felt like that was kind of obvious from the beginning because they were building it up. It still kind of surprised me by the end because I didn't fully put it together, but I had an idea that she was probably relevant to JoJo's story to some regard, especially since, you know, she was announced to be the girl from the shipwreck that Jonathan in the last part died in. But I still thought that there was a lot of really good moments with her. I thought she was a very entertaining character, but at the same time, I just don't really know how to feel about her. Like, she's fine. She just kind of serves her purpose. One thing I actually didn't kind of like too much was the big training arc for Caesar and Joseph in this part. They're meant to go on this big epic training session to try to learn how to control their Harmon, which is a thing relevant from the last season, where it seems like they're slowly starting to develop them, but then all of a sudden it just kind of shoots through it. Like how in one of the first episodes that they arrive for their training in this part of JoJo, they get kicked into this pit that they have to use their Harmon to escape from, and then all of a sudden time just flies by. One moment they're in there for like 5 minutes, next moment they're in there for 3 days. It's kind of ridiculous how much time skipping does happen in this part of JoJo. I just think it's a little bit more well done than the previous part where it just suddenly jumps like 3 to 4 years. I think this was a little more balanced, but it still was a kind of frustrating point that we didn't get to see their development and learning how to control their Harmon. As for Joseph as a character though, I love Joseph so much. He's so great. He's so entertaining in so many different ways, and I've said so a lot in that last sentence, but it's just so true. Because Joseph is just so funny, especially since it makes it seem like he always knows what he's doing. Like how in literally the first 2 episodes, in one of those episodes, he freaking straps like 5-10 grenades onto a guy's back without him even noticing it. I just couldn't stop laughing because it was so ridiculous. But it fits so well for his character. As well as the fact there was this one part in part 2 where he had to like get into a Nazi base, and during that, or was it Russian, I don't know, where he was trying to get in, so he tried to cross-dress as a woman. And I don't know why, but for some reason I could not stop laughing throughout that entire scene. My friend was just looking at me like he was like, are you okay, dude? Because I just could not stop laughing at how ridiculous he looked, and it was just so great. And definitely my favorite part from all of this was at the end. I mentioned at the beginning of this video how the ending could have been bad, but then actually ended really good, where it originally was going to look like Joseph fell down the same road as Jonathan, where he died in the end, only his death felt extremely underwhelming in comparison to Jonathan's death. However, I was then spoiled because after I started watching JoJo openings, I then got that announcement spoiled to me that Joseph survives, so it was a little confusing to me at the time, but then once he came and crashed his own funeral, that could not make me stop laughing. I could not stop laughing during that whole scene because he's just like, guess who? What's up, fellas? Why are you all here at this grave? Why does this have my name on that tombstone? I'm alive and well. And it's just so great because everything starring Joseph in this part is so entertaining. He's such a more carefree guy than Jonathan ever was. I find myself so entertained by what he does that I can honestly say he's been my favorite JoJo. He's been my absolute favorite. And I can see why my friend was hyping up part 2 so much, saying it was really good. Because other than the villains, which I'll be honest, some of their fights were extremely underwhelming and some kind of felt out of nowhere. I still liked them, but it was kind of annoying about how some of the villains were defeated. While the first 3 that were introduced were fine, the one that irritates me the most is definitely got to be the final villain, where he's like, I've become this all-powerful being. Nothing can stop me. What about lava? What? I don't know why, but for some reason, out of nowhere, Joseph just immediately thinks, lava must be his weakness! Lava? Where did that come from? If he's an immortal being, shouldn't he be immune to lava too? Oh man, it didn't make much sense at all. But I guess they just really wanted to wrap up that part and call it a day, so they just decided lava. That's how you defeat the villain. Lava. One major part that I actually didn't really like too much of this season was definitely the romance between Joseph and his soon-to-be wife, Susie Q, which is a girl in the group that's kind of just there for most of it. She doesn't really do much, which I get. That's how Joseph girlfriends work. Most of the time, they don't tend to kick ass. They just tend to just be there. But it was still very, very disappointing that I really didn't like Susie Q that much, not gonna lie. The only time she's funny is when Joseph is with her because, again, Joseph just makes the whole show a fantastic watch. Especially at the end of the season when he learns that she didn't send the others a message that he was alive. So then he just starts like moving his robotic arm that he gets at the end of the season. And she's just like, now, let's not get all clicky fingers. I don't know why. I could not stop laughing during that scene. All in all, there were a lot of great moments. And it was, while I can't say I cried, because Caesar, you know, Joseph's best friend, does die in the same part, I didn't really feel that much emotion for Caesar, because even though I thought it was a sad death, I didn't really think of it as something major because this is a single part. Just like I didn't really feel much for Zeppelin's death in part 1. I didn't really have much of a connection yet. It was a single part. I didn't have enough time to grow connected to this character. Now, if I saw Joseph die, that's a whole different story because I know that he's going to be sticking around a bit longer, which, you know, that's what's going to happen in the next part. So I am looking forward to seeing what adventures he has in that part as well. But overall, I definitely find that this season, as many flaws as it has, still stands as a fantastic season. I keep saying season because that's just what I'm used to, but it was a fantastic part, and I do not regret sitting down and giving this part a shot because it made me immediately fall in love with JoJo. I think it's great, and I really want to see what happens next in JoJo, although if I'm being honest, I'm not really a fan of the stands so far. Maybe they'll grow on me, who knows. But yeah, that's all I really have to say now, so we're at the conclusion of this video. So what are my final thoughts? I loved it. I absolutely love this season. Despite the many flaws it has, I still had a great time. And yes, I'm calling this part a season because that's what I'm used to saying. But overall, I had a great time with this part, and I loved it so much. Joseph is definitely my favorite JoJo as of right now. And overall, I'm looking forward to seeing what bizarre adventure lies ahead for part 3. And yeah, that's why I probably have to give JoJo Part 2 a 9 out of 10. Fantastic part. After the flaws have been counted, it's still a solid 9 out of 10. Definitely great, and I look forward to seeing what happens next in part 3, as I mentioned before. So, that's all I really have to say. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I try to upload anime reviews weekly. And yeah, I thank you all for watching. Peace!